The next speaker is a lead researcher of policies for design and innovation at Design Wales, part of the National Centre for Product Design and Development Research at Cardiff Metropolitan University. Since 2009, she has been coordinating the C network of 11 European partners, sharing international best practice to accelerate the integration of design into innovation policies and programs. And since 2013, she's also been a board member at BEDA, the Bureau of European Design Associations, together with Sweet's CEO, Robin Edman. And earlier, she's worked at the UK Parliament as a press officer in the French Ministry of European Affairs and as assistant marketing manager for Siemens in Paris. In parallel to her work, she is undertaking a PhD to analyze design as a driver of innovation policy. Please welcome Anna Witcher. Give her a hand.
Thank you, Helena. And thank you very much to the Swedish Industrial Design Foundation for inviting me here today. Now, as Eva Korin already said, sitting is the new smoking. So I'd like you to all stand up, please. As you know, the title of the conference today is Mission User. And today, you are my users, so I'd like to understand a little bit more about you. I'd like to know what type of people we have in the audience. So, if you're not a designer, please can you sit down? So only designers remain standing. Okay, that's great, thank you, thank you. Okay, if you'd all like to stand up again, please. Okay, if you don't work in the public sector or in government, please sit down. So only civil servants and government officials should remain standing. Oh, fantastic. Okay, that's a really good split between the design audience and public officials. Okay, and can the rest of you all please stand up again? Now I need to find out who didn't, who hasn't remained standing. So if you are an academic, can you remain standing? So if you're not an academic, can you all please sit down? Ooh, okay. A few sneaky academics coming in there, that's great. Thank you very much. If you'd all like to sit down, that's great, lovely. Okay, so based on what Laura already said about making policy sexy for designers, I want to now make design sexy for those of you based in government. So design sexy for the policymakers. As Helena said, I'm based in PDR in Cardiff in Wales, which I've learnt today is the same size as Yukmuk, which is brilliant. It's a trivia question I hope might come up in a pub quiz at some stage. To start off at the beginning, design. This is not a question I want to spend long on, but from the discussion that we've already had today, it is clear that design is a difficult concept for policymakers to grasp. It's difficult because you can't predict what the outcome of the process is going to be at the start. So imagine if you're a government official and you want to potentially use a new methodology, use design, but the person that you're contracting to do the project can't necessarily tell you what the outcome is going to be at the start. That's a problem. And that is a real challenge for designers to try to communicate why that is a good approach for governments to take, why co-creating the solution with users is a good approach. So when I talk about design with government, I talk about design being an approach to problem solving that starts with, as we've already said, an understanding of user needs. And therefore, as a process that starts from user needs, it can be applied to products, services, processes, and even, crucially, policy making. Because ultimately, as we've already discussed today, the definitions of design and the definitions of policy making are so crucial. Making decisions that are better for society, that's crucially what both of them are about. And Because of these new trends in government, the trend of developing policies in much closer collaboration with citizens, design is gaining more and more attention across Europe at multiple levels of governance. At the level of the European Commission, in national governments, regional governments, and even local governments, as we heard from the 27e region. The European Commission has developed an action plan for design, and in which they state that design, as a tool for user-centered and market-driven innovation in all sectors of the economy, complementary to R&D, could improve European competitiveness. So this is about not only using design to drive innovation in the private sector and public sectors, but using design across different policy domains. So design for health policy, design for environment policy, design for transport policy, design for regional development and rurality, as we've already heard. I would like to give you a very brief overview of the project that I run, and then based on the project, I'd like to give you some lessons that we've learnt for how to communicate design to policymakers and how design can have a real impact in the policymaking process. So C, which stands for Sharing Experience Europe, is a network of 11 design centres across Europe using design methods to develop innovation policy and innovation programmes. As Robin already said, one of the best ways to get design integrated into policy is integrating into innovation policy. Do we need a separate design policy? Maybe. Sometimes, by having design integrated into innovation policy, you have this broad understanding of design. You have design included across different policy domains. But by having a dedicated design action plan, you also have the depth. You have the specific design-related actions, such as including design in business support programs, or including design in specific education initiatives, such as apprenticeships. So I think that actually we need both the design included in innovation policy as well as dedicated design action plans. And countries like Denmark, Latvia, France, Estonia and Finland have developed dedicated design action plans complementary to the broader innovation policies. So what I'd like to do is just give you a few lessons of what we've learnt. As I said, design is a very difficult concept for policymakers to grasp. So instead of telling them about design, we've tried to show them what design is. And we've involved over 800 policymakers in 100 hands-on workshops that use design tools such as stakeholder mapping, ideation, customer journey mapping, and service blueprinting, methods that I'm sure many of you here are familiar with. And therefore, by actually involving them in these in these hands-on workshops, you kind of see the light bulb go on. You kind of see, oh, now they understand what the added value of design is. And this has been a much better way to communicate design. So what we've therefore done is develop design policy using design methods. So design for policy by design. I think it's also important to create a network of policymakers who use design methods. It's not necessarily enough to do a one-off design project and hope that people in government are going to continue to use design. We have to embed these lessons by training civil servants in design methods. And as I said, we've engaged over 800 policymakers, training them in half-day workshops in design. Data. Data is a big thing in design. The first thing that policymakers want to know is, what is the return on investment going to be if I invest in a design project? I think there's still a lot of work to be done here, but what I'd encourage all the previous speakers to do is to evaluate the projects you've done. Evaluate your case studies so that when you can then communicate those results to other policymakers and create a snowball effect. So what we've done is we've looked at how companies in Europe use design. And as I'm sure you're very familiar with the Danish design ladder, which diagnoses companies according to 4 stages. So no design, design as styling, design as process, and then the top level, design as strategy, so as a driver of the business model. Actually in Sweden, this research was done in 2004. So I think that the value of benchmarking design is about doing it regularly. And it just so happens that the Commission right now is doing a study on how companies across the 28 European member states use design. And this is going to be the first time we've ever had this pan-European data, which is going to be fantastic. And what I'd love to do is to persuade the Commission to do that exact same thing from the public sector. So how strategically are different parts of the public sector using design? We've looked also at public and private spending on design. And I think the UK is quite unique in Europe because we are possibly the only country in Europe where the private sector spends more on design than they do on traditional R&D. Another crucial thing is telling a story. We've all talked about how design is fantastic at capturing user empathy. Well, let's use that in the way that we tell stories to government. So we've developed a case study booklet called Design for Public Good, which has a series of case studies of design in the public sector. Design never operates alone. Design is connected to every part of the innovation system. And I think that we need to realize that design is not going to solve all the problems for government, but it can really contribute. Nevertheless, I think there are certain weaknesses that we need to be aware of. We've talked a lot today about service designers, and a number of service designers stood up in the audience today, which is fantastic. But I think that we need to be realistic, and I think there's a big skills gap in the design sector, certainly in the UK and potentially all across Europe, where professional designers are not necessarily engaging in continuous professional development. So new developments in the disciplines, such as service design, design for policymaking, are still potentially slightly beyond the mainstream of the majority of designers. Promotion is a big thing as well. How do we tap into those new audiences? So I was really really pleased when Robin said that there are plenty of faces here that he'd never seen before, which is great. So it's about tapping into those new audiences, talking to the doctors and the healthcare professionals, talking to the local policymakers, talking to the people in charge of the business support programs. The issue of professional skills among designers is really closely connected to education and research in design. So are the design schools at the cutting edge of the design discipline, or are they still teaching the same curriculums they've been teaching for the last decade or 2 decades? So to contribute to policy making, so integrating design into innovation policy, we've been looking at mapping design innovation systems. So these are the actors and initiatives in place in a country. So we looked obviously at Wales, looking at what initiatives there are for those 9 components of the design innovation ecosystem. By understanding who the players are, you can then create networks of collaboration, and you can identify what the gaps are, so you can build on those gaps, but you can also capitalize on the strengths. So it's about jointly developing policy with all the actors there on the ground. But this idea of ecosystem mapping doesn't just have to be done for design innovation. It can be done for a whole range of policy domains. It can be done for the environment. It can be done for circular economy. It can be done for healthcare, welfare. So I think it's about using these techniques to develop more holistic, more user-focused policies in close collaboration with the citizens. I just want to give you a couple of examples of the actions included in the policy that we have developed with the Welsh Government. And as I said, we developed this in collaboration with the policy beneficiaries, so in collaboration with academics, with industry, with designers, and with third sector organisations in Wales. We've looked at training the innovation specialists in the Welsh Government. So these are people who provide business support. They're experts in tax, they're experts in law, they're experts in establishing change management and business processes, and they know a little bit about design, but design isn't their main domain. So therefore, by training these people, by providing additional training in design, they can then communicate those to the SMEs that they work with. Wales, being biased, Wales is one of the best places in the UK to start a company. because you have so much support from the government. You can have subsidies to buy equipment, you can have free training, you can have mentoring, you can have tax credits, you can have grants. There's an infinite list. And the problem with an infinite list is it can be very complicated for SMEs to navigate. So as an SME, many businesses didn't know where to access the most appropriate support for them. So what we did was we did a mapping of all the different design support programs, all the different innovation programs available through the Welsh Government to try to see if it was possible to make the process much more streamlined and clear for businesses. And having done that, the process has been, the business support structure has been much more consolidated. So now multiple competencies, including design, are offered through one program, which means that the landscape is so much easier for SMEs to navigate. And I think, as Robin already said this morning, it's about integrating design into all these different innovation programs to make sure that every SME who interfaces with government support has the opportunity to access some form of design support. And then, as I said previously, more continuous professional opportunities for designers. I think design apprenticeships is something that I think is going to become really big in Europe. It seems that potentially higher education in design is not necessarily performing the function that it should be. And professional design agencies are having to completely retrain graduates. So what we're trying to do is to introduce a work-based learning diploma where the students actually work within a design agency to get the business experience that they need. And of course, we're looking to access education opportunities at every single level, from primary through to tertiary. We already heard Christian mention again this morning about how an increasing number of designers are being placed within public authorities at these multiple levels. And we've also set up a design and development grant specifically aimed at startups and young entrepreneurs. So capturing the impact, what has C achieved? So in 3 years, we've influenced 17 programs and 40 policies for innovation. They include, for example, the Welsh Government Innovation Strategy, the strategy for South Bohemia, for Central Finland, for Silesia, and for Flanders, as well as a number of innovation programs such as tax credits and grants. So just to finish, I'd like to make a few predictions for trends for design by 2020, and I hope that by saying them, that they will be they'll come true because I've said them out loud. So I think that increasingly we'll see design as an approach to policy making, and not just innovation policy making, which was the focus of my program, but across a broad range of disciplines. And I think we're also going to see a number of dedicated design action plans across Europe. I think we're also going to see civil servants being trained more and more in design methods, and more design managers at multiple levels of governance across Europe. And I think that we're going to see more innovation programs that have a specific component for design, as well as more dedicated design programs, specifically on design intervention. So if this is a topic that's of interest to you, please do catch me afterwards. And I have some questions for you as well.
Great, thank you so much, Anna. And during the time they are trying to get the questions, your questions to the audience, I'll give you this chocolate.
Oh, thank you. Tack.
And also you can continue asking questions for Anna. We only have one at the moment, I think, at the Mentimeter. govote.at. I think you know the code already. So continue to ask questions. And Anna also have 2 questions.
Yep.
For you.
So my question for you is, does Sweden need a design policy or a design action plan?
I think the answer is pretty clear. If you think differently, you have to hurry up and answer.
we're having elections in the UK next month, and we expect that the voting turnout will be about 36%. So this is representative of turnout in UK elections. Okay, well, nobody feels passionately that there definitely should not be a design policy, so I'll take that as a good thing. And then my next question for you is, to embed design for policy making, should we be training the top 100 civil servants in design thinking?
And Anna, what do you think?
Absolutely. In case you hadn't guessed.
So maybe you can explain why to the people answering, I don't know.
I think that we already had several questions this morning about implementation and about making ideas stick. And I think that in order to foster this idea that design really is a method for capturing better user insight, we need to be introducing design methods at every level of governance. But as we already said, you need to have the buy-in from the top level, the senior civil servants, in order to really mobilize decision-making in government.
Great. Okay, I think it's pretty clear, the answer. So let's switch to the audience questions for Anna. Okay, we have two. Can you read them yourself?
Yeah.
Which
user needs in society isn't design able to address? It's a good question. I think that to a certain extent, design can be applied to any process. But I think it does have limits, because inevitably design is about synthesizing a large range of input. So with these super wicked problems that Christian was talking about this morning, how do you involve thousands of stakeholders in a design process, in a hands-on design process? I think that we need to move beyond traditional consultation methods and to try to think about how you can mobilize large sections of the population to use design, but that's a challenge. So anybody who's involved, say, more than 2,000 users, in a hands-on process, I'd be very keen to hear about that.
I think you wait with the middle one. You can end with that one, I think. That's a good one.
Okay. So what's my elevator pitch to sell design as a process to non-design believers? Okay.
Do you want to take that one last, or do you want to do it?
Yeah, I can take that last, yeah.
So
give me a chance to think about it.
How should the civil servants be educated?
Like I said, I think it's very difficult to tell people what design is. I think you really do need to show them. And I think if you introduce simple design tools at first, you can create an appetite for that way of working. By creating an appetite, you can then introduce more complex design methods to civil servants.
I don't know what language that is.
Yeah.
Swedish something. How can Swedish be involved in... I don't understand that question. I think it's, once again, no. How can inhabitants? Or what is it?
Actors.
In Sweden be actors. That's a good one. So it should be put into that sentence?
How can Swedish actors be involved in C? Well, that's a great question. I am trying to persuade Robin to be more involved, and I'd love to come to facilitate a design policy process with some Swedish stakeholders. But I think that there's lots of lessons that Swedish actors can take from the C platform already. And I hope that we can continue this conversation, certainly through BEDA, through the Bureau of European Design Associations, and also through Design for Europe, which is a follow-on initiative by the European Commission.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And Robin will actually be the president of BEDA in June, so that's a good start. Okay, is it easy to develop a design innovation ecosystem, for instance, for Stockholm?
Yeah.
And how much effort is needed?
Yeah. Stockholm already has a design innovation ecosystem. And I think, but I certainly think there'd be value in mapping what that ecosystem looks like, and then potentially fostering greater collaboration between certain actors which may not already be collaborating to the extent that they should be. So as I said, bridging the gaps and capitalizing on the strengths.
And how can you make sure that the controversial ideas that might be the result of a design process actually gets implemented?
It's a really good question, because very often you have a workshop with civil servants and designers, and at the end of the day, everyone's really excited. You had some really great ideas, and everybody was really energetic, and it was really great. And then you go back to the office, and you get bogged down in your daily work again. And I think it's really important to capitalize on those ideas quickly. So it's about creating a panel of experts, whether that's in the department, whether the recommendations have been made, or across different government departments, to make sure that those ideas are not just visions, but are translated into tangible ideas.
Okay, great. And now the last one, the pitch, the elevator pitch.
Okay, so my elevator pitch to non-design believers. I think public governance is changing. I think people are getting frustrated with the way that governments operate. And I think that even politicians and public administrators themselves are recognizing that we need new processes. And design is one of those processes that can really capture the hearts and minds of the citizens. It's a process which is a two-way relationship between government and between citizens, where both can jointly develop solutions for the better of society.
Wow.
That'd be my pitch.
Good one. Thank you very much, Anna Witcher.
Thank you.